Oigan, chicos, in this video, I'm going to talk about the relative adjective cuyo. So we've been talking about relative pronouns, and this goes along with that lesson. It's just technically not a pronoun. It's an adjective. It's like a possessive adjective. We are going to say whose is something is. If it's whose class is this, whose backpack is this, whose phone is this. We just use the word cuyo, and it works just like it does in English. Well, really close to how it does in English. So cuyo is, as I said, it's an adjective, so it's going to have four different forms. You're going to have cuyo, cuya, cuyos, and cuyas. You'll have the, just like we do with alto, alta, altos, and altas. We have four forms, masculine, feminine, and number we have to make sure we have agreement in. So with this, again, as I said, it works pretty much just like how you use the word W-H-O-S-E in English, whose. And I've spelled it out for you, and you can see it's right here too, W-H-O-S-E, as in, so it does not get confused with the question and contraction of whose, like who's on the phone. That's a different word. That's not the same thing. This is with this word when it's showing possession. So let me go and give some examples here. El equipo cuyo proyecto aprobaron viajará a las Islas Galápagos en febrero. Now, in this sentence here, we've got this little non-restrictive clause. We're saying whose project they approved. It is cuyo here. And again, look at the translation here. It's whose project, just exactly like you would use in English, whose. So this grammar-wise, this isn't that difficult. But the reason it's cuyo with an O at the end, the masculine singular form, is because of the word proyecto and not because of el equipo. So, if you're looking at this video and you've been looking at the other relative pronoun videos, we've done a lot of referencing the antecedent. And in this case, it seems to fit with what we've been doing. We would be referencing el equipo. But if you actually think about what we're saying here, we're saying whose project. We're not saying that it's the project of the team. We're just saying it's whose project. So this word cuyo is modifying the word project, proyecto. So that's why it agrees. That's why it's masculine singular. Doesn't matter what we had here. We happen to have a masculine singular noun to start off our sentence, but it could be anything here. It wouldn't change if it being cuyo as long as it's proyecto. So moving on, we got la colega is our subject here, la colega, and then we're going to give a little more information about this colleague. We're going to say that her ideas improved the plan, or whose ideas improved the plan. The colleague whose ideas improved the plan. We're using cuyas here because of la idea or las ideas. It's la idea. It's a feminine noun. This happens to be the plural form of it, so we use the feminine and plural form of ideas, or of cuyos, and of cuyo, and we make it the feminine plural form, which is cuyas. Cuyas ideas has nothing to do with la colega, the form that we used. So the colleague whose ideas improved the plan. Again, this is just a little non-restrictive clause that's just giving a little bit more information about la colega. Now, look at this here. This, as I said, this is almost completely the way you would use whose in English, except when it's a question. Whenever you have a question and you ask somebody, whose map is this? Whose class is this? You can't use cuyo in that instance. In these cases, you cannot use cuyo. You have to use the question phrase de quién es. So if I were to ask you, again, this example, for example, here we've got whose map of Venezuela is this? ¿De quién es este mapa de Venezuela? We cannot say cuyo mapa, or we can't use cuyo with that. So if we were to say, whose class is this? ¿De quién es la clase? ¿De quién es la clase? If we are going to move on, let's look at this last example here. It's mine, but it's not a map. Es mío, pero no es un mapa. Es un atlas cuyos autores son venezolanos. So it's an atlas whose authors, but now we did use whose or cuyos for whose in this case because it's no longer a question. So es un atlas cuyos autores, and that's agreeing with autores, masculine plural. That's why we have the masculine plural form here. So again, whose as a question, whenever using that, whose map is this? Whose class is this? Whose drink is this? You will not use cuyo with it. You have to ask the question de quién, or de quiénes. If it's plural, if it's you're expecting a plural answer to the question. And the cuyo, when it's whose, when it's used as a possessive and not a question, then we're going to use cuyo, and it will agree with whatever it is modifying. It has nothing to do with the antecedent as other relative pronouns have dealt with. It functions differently. It'll agree with whatever it is modifying right after the word cuyo.